Good afternoon, this is Adrienne Warren and welcome to our database training today. I just wanted to go ahead and take you through some of the database basics so you can get a head start for our next training, or this might be supplementary instead of our database training. So I just wanted to go ahead and work through some of the basics and some of the most typical homework items I might assign from this training. Now, once you've logged into the administrative side of your website, you should have received those credentials and the link in our follow-up email from your kickoff call. Once you've logged in with those credentials, this is the page that you'll be brought to. Now, this page is comprised of a couple of different dashboards. I wanted to go ahead and mention that each of these dashboards just holds a snapshot of information. So you'll be able to look even further into each of these items that we're about to go through in just a moment in other places in the system. But this is a great place for you to come in and just take an immediate look at what's going on in the system. To start off, we have two membership dashboards. Our first dashboard is our current membership rosters. Now, you'll have each of your member types listed along the left-hand column. And then your members, once your database has been imported, will be listed out. You'll see, as of right now, all of your members in the active status. Once we're ready to launch your product, we're going to automate your membership, which will move your members from active, which is this column that we see here, to graced. That grace period is kind of a little bit of leeway. So your member has now passed their expiration date, but they are in that kind of area where they can still log into the site. They still have full access to the site. Everything still looks the same on the back end to you. They just are kind of past their expiration date. So you're just giving them a little bit of leeway. And then if they go out of their grace period, they're going to fall into their lapsed status. At that time, they'll no longer be able to log into the back end of the site. They won't be able to take advantage of any of the social community features. And they also won't be able to take advantage of member type pricing. Now for you all, obviously they'll still remain in their member type. You'll still be able to search for them, have all of their information in here. The only difference is they're going to be in this lapsed status. Now we also have a pending column. We can offer the ability to require a type of, like you have to approve a membership before they actually can become a member. And so in that case, they would go in this pending column. We can talk more about this if you're interested. If you do not have a pending membership, then you would not see this fourth column. So you would not have this available for viewing unless we set this up. We also have our included, what I like to call our non-member member type, which is this prospect non-member member type at the bottom. So it's going to let you know how many total prospects you have, and then of course how many total active you have. That's going to include everybody in your database. We also have new members in the last 90 days. This is just going to take out any of those new members that have joined just in the last 90 days. That way you can find those individuals quickly to communicate with them, frequently reiterating the membership benefits they're gaining by being a part of your association. So you'll find those guys over here in this right hand. The next set of dashboards we have are our event dashboards. These are actually going to be pulling from event registration forms. So we'll talk more about this when we get to our forms training. This is just giving you a quick snapshot. So over here we've got 3 past event attendances. So up to 3 events will reflect in this dashboard that have come to pass, the date that they were held on, and how many people attended. And then we have up to 3 upcoming expected events that will show up on the right-hand side, the date that they were held on, or the date that they will be held on, and how many people have registered so far. Lastly, we have our financial dashboard. Our left-hand dashboard is reflecting aged receivables. This is going to show you how many outstanding invoices you have by how many days and how much money. So along the left-hand side, you're going to notice this is going to move in increments of money amounts. And along the bottom, this is going to show you whether these invoices are current. So a big green bar here in our bar graph is going to reflect that these invoices are current. 1 to 30 days past due is what this means. 31 to 60 days past due, 61 to 90, and 91 plus days past due. Now this is just our test site and member clicks, so we've got a lot of really past due invoices, but if you guys saw this, it might cause a little bit of concern. Now this will also reflect the last time that this was updated. And if you feel like it's not showing real time, you can always use our refresh button, and that's going to give you the most recent up-to-date reflection of what's going on in your financials. The other dashboard that we have on financials is our sales over time. Now this is going to show us a line graph depicting how much money was brought in per revenue account per month. So you'll notice that we have our different months along the bottom. We can select a revenue account filter, and we can choose which revenue account we really want to take a look at. So maybe we want to see what's going on with this golf. We can apply that filter, and we'll be able to see how much money that golf revenue account has brought in per month. I think this can be a really useful piece of information. This is everything about this first page on our dashboards. I'm going to take just a second before I transition to the next topic to let you write down any questions that you might have so we can review those questions on our next call together. All right, so the next item that I want to go ahead and start talking through, we're going to be working under our Settings tab and our Account Settings tab. Now this is just going to hold a lot of general information about your association. I'm going to set this up for you based on your account settings document. So if I've received that already, I would have already set this up in your product. We're going to go ahead and jump into our account settings. The main item that I want to point out to you all, once you've graduated from the onboarding process, you're going to start calling into the help team. They're going to ask for an account number. That account number will always be able to be found under this account settings tab right in this area. The reason this is so important is because, like I said, you'll need to provide this to the help team if you call in with any questions. That's just going to help them find your account. And I love that this is back here in our back end. You don't have to memorize it or write it down. You can always find it right in the product. This is also a great area to keep track of how many profiles are being used. So we have our we've got our custom profiles here. That's that 94 out of 300 number. That's how many custom profiles you have. And then prospect profiles, which is this 89 out of 900. These numbers will just depend on what level you have in our product. In this case, this is reflecting a level 1. I will have also set up what time zone your product needs to be in. Your membership year. Now, one thing I want to point out about the membership year is that if you are on an anniversary or period of time expiration date, meaning that if I joined your association today, my expiration date would be 1 year from today. It wouldn't be on a fiscal system. That's actually going to be overridden in our member type settings. And so we're probably not going to talk about that today in this training, but we'll definitely talk about that at some point together. But if you are on that fiscal calendar year, whatever month is in this area is going to reflect the starting date of your member's expiration date. We have our member numbers. So I always like to keep this on. It's a great system attribute for the system to use to keep track of your members. If you ever need to make a mass update to your members, this member number is really going to be an asset. You can hide the member number in the permissions. So we'll be able to talk more about that today a little bit later on. So basically, if you don't want your members to know that they have a member number, you'll be able to turn this off somewhere else. But I always like to leave it on in this area. If you use QuickBooks, then you'll want to make sure this toggle is on. If you do not use QuickBooks, we can just turn it off. Notifications. So this area, you'll be sending notifications or emails out from MemberClicks to your members. If there's ever a time where your member needs to reply to that email, it needs to go somewhere, not just back to MemberClicks. So whatever reply to email address, wherever you want those emails to go to once your members are ready to respond to an email they receive from MemberClicks, wherever that email needs to go would be this email address. So wherever that's going, you'll need to put this email address in this area. You can also put a from name. Generally, that would be your association name or whatever individual is dealing with answering those emails. But this is optional, so if you don't want to put anything, you don't have to put anything at this time. Keep in mind, you can always come in here at any time and update this information. So if you don't have an admin email address for your association and you're thinking that would be the way to go, you can get that set up, come back in here and add that at a later date. Lastly, we have billing contact information. This is just the contact information that MemberClicks needs to have on file for your association. Everything under this account settings tab is usually pretty straightforward, but I'm going to do the same thing here and give you guys a couple minutes to write down any questions you might have for the next time we get together. The next item I want to start talking about are financials. I'm going to go ahead and work under the financial tab and jump into our invoices. Now this is going to bring us directly into our invoice list. This is going to house all invoices that will ever be created in your product. So we've listed these by invoice number, the type of invoice, first name, last name, organization, the status of the invoice, the total amount of the invoice, the due date, and whether you want to void or view that invoice. You can select any of these column headers to put these items in numerical or alphabetize these items as well. So if you want them in numerical order or to alphabetize, you would just need to select that column header. You can also sort your invoices in a couple of different ways. I know I have a couple of test invoices in here, so I can search in the top right-hand corner. You'll be able to search by first name, last name, organization, or invoice number. I'm going to go ahead and select my name, and that's going to bring up all of the invoices in the system under my name. If we wanted to do a further filter, we could also use these statuses at the top. So maybe we really only care about seeing the voided invoices for me. We can select void, and it's going to show me the 2 voided invoices that are under my name in the system. You'll also have the opportunity to email or print off a specific invoice. So if you have an individual that has called you and says maybe they haven't received their invoice, or maybe their invoice needs to be sent to a different individual, you can find their invoice in the system. You'll just tag that invoice, and then you can select email. It's going to list the default email address that was in their profile. You can either change that or add additional recipients. And then once you select send one invoice, it's going to send that invoice to whatever email addresses you've added to this area. We can also select create PDF, and this is going to print off that one invoice as well, so we can send that through the mail to your member. And then lastly, we can filter by invoice type. Ad hoc invoices are just a miscellaneous or one-off invoice that would have been created. We have credit memos, forms, so if that's a new membership application, some type of event registration form, those would all fall under the forms category. And then lastly, renewals, so those would only be invoices for dues renewals. Now I want to go ahead and select an invoice number so we can see what your invoices look like. So I'm just going to click that invoice number, and it's going to give us a page with the invoice reflected on it. Now these invoices are going to look the exact same for your association. The only difference is that you'll see your logo up here in the top right-hand corner, and then you'll see your association information over here in the top left-hand corner. I will show you in just a moment where you can add those fields in at to create this kind of template or add these specifications to how you want your invoice to look. So we'll be going over that in just a moment. Now directly from the invoice, there's a couple things I want to point out. One is this notes section. I'm also going to show you on this training today where you can add this notes field in at. Most commonly I see remit payment to info. So these would be external notes. You also have the ability to add internal notes. So that would be right down here in this area. If we add an internal note, what I love about this is it's going to let you know when you added the note. You could always remove the note if you no longer need it. But the great thing about this is if you voided an invoice or whatever the case may be, you can add that note to remind yourself maybe why you voided that particular invoice. And of course that would be internal, so only administrators would be able to see that note on the administrative side of the site. A couple of other items that you can do, so you can download the invoice from here to print it off. You can void the invoice, you can create a credit invoice, and then one item that you will probably be using often is the pay invoice. So you may have an individual that calls you and wants to apply credit card payment over the phone, or they may submit a check or some type of other offline payment. So in order to record that in MemberClicks, you're going to select Pay Invoice. You can either apply their credit card information, or You have the option to choose that this is an offline payment. If this is an offline payment, you can specify what type of offline payment this is, the amount that needs to be paid if there's just a partial payment. You can add in a reference or check number, the date that you received, and then whatever correct email address that needs to be in this area. Typically, that's just going to default to whatever email address is in the member's profile. At that time, you'll be able to submit the offline payment and the invoice will reflect as paid in the system. And that is everything about our invoices. To get back to our invoice list, we can select invoice list. Now we can also view your member's profile, but we are going to be looking at your members' profiles later on in this recording today. So for right now, I'm just going to go back to our invoice list, and you'll notice this brings us right back to that original area that we were in. The next item that I want to talk about are invoice templates. In our kickoff call, we would have talked a little bit about the notifications document. So that notifications document, either you've already completed it or you're working on it now. That has to do with the verbiage that will be sent out in regards to dues renewals in the system. Now, if there is any other type of invoice that's created in the system, we will need some type of notification created to remind your members either that they have the open invoice that they need to pay. We can send out a second reminder letting them know that they need to pay the invoice, a past due reminder, and then something you'll always want to set up at minimum will be a payment confirmation notification. So if there's any type of invoice that's created in the system other than dues renewals, you're going to want to create an invoice template for that type of invoice. I always suggest starting by creating a list of every type of invoice the system will create for you, whether that's event invoices, new member invoices, donation invoices, sponsorship invoices, partnership invoices, advertising invoices, whatever type of invoices your system will be holding. So now I'm going to go ahead and select invoice templates. Now the MemberClicks product in our test site here has a couple of different ones. A lot of these are what I would have just mentioned. To create a new invoice template, you're just going to select create an invoice template. You'll want to name this, so you might be creating this for new members. You can select a net due date. So from the day that the invoice is created, when is this invoice due? I mentioned earlier the notes section on the invoice. That notes section is actually pulling from this footer information field. So any notes that you would want to appear on the invoice, this is where you would add that information in at. And then at the bottom, you'll just need to set up these different email or invoice notifications. So if you have an event and you're allowing your member to register for the event but come back at a later date to pay for the event, you can just turn on this new invoice email, and you'll want to make sure that you edit the email. Otherwise, a blank email is going to go out. So make sure that you're typing in some verbiage in this area. Thank you so much for registering for our event. We can't wait to see you soon. Please make sure you pay the attached invoice, and it will attach the invoice with this notification. You'll want to go ahead and set this up for each reminder that you want to use. Now, if this is an event that they have to pay for at time of registration, so they can't complete the submission of the registration until they've applied payment, using this payment notification email is really going to be the only notification that you need to set up. But just as important, everybody's going to want to receive some type of notification letting them know that their payment was received. The next item that I want to talk about are invoice settings. So this is actually where you're going to add in your organization logo. This is the logo that appeared on the top right-hand corner of your invoice. Your organization information, this is your organization's information that's going to appear on the top left-hand corner of your invoice. And then you can set what invoice number the system's going to start at next for you. So if you want this to be a invoice 1000, invoice 500, you can even start at invoice number 1, which is going to be in this area by default for you guys. So just these 3 little items for you all to set up here. I just wanted to go ahead and mention invoice templates and invoice settings are both going to be part of your homework from today's or from the database training. So these are both going to be items that you'll need to set up. When we get ready to launch towards the end of our trainings together, we're going to go through the Go Live checklist. That Go Live checklist is just going to make sure that you guys completed items like this that I'll be assigning from each of our trainings. So make sure, if you're keeping up with these from each training, there will really be no work at the end of all of our trainings together in the system. The next two items, I just wanted to go ahead and quickly go through those as well, are revenue accounts. This is where all of your revenue accounts will be held. To add a new revenue account, you'll just select Add New Revenue Account. You can add the account name, the description of the account, which is optional. Now, if this revenue account is holding dues renewals, you're going to turn on that it's for dues revenue. I'm sorry, if it's holding dues period, not necessarily just renewals, but any type of dues amount, you would turn this on. If you use a cash accounting system, you can use our cash accounting toggle. If you're on an accrual-based financial system, you're just going to keep this turned off. And at that time, you'll be able to save that revenue account. Lastly, we have our payment processor. You'll either find Moolah or Authorize.net, just depending on what payment processor you are using in the system here. We can select Edit, and for you all, you'll either find your Moolah credentials after completing the application with Heart, or you'll be able to put in your Authorize.net credentials. I do want to go ahead and mention, if you are using Moolah in the system, please keep in mind that the application process, once you've completed that and sent it back to our Moolah representative, it can take up to 10 days to be processed. So make sure that's something that you're working on early on in the process of getting started with MemberClicks, just to ensure that that payment processor is set up before graduating or before being ready to launch the product. Now, these are all the items that I wanted to review on financials for this training. So once again, I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to review any questions that you might have, maybe jot those down, so we'll be able to talk about those on our next call together if we need to. The next item that I want to go ahead and jump into is going to be under our database tab, and we're going to go ahead and dive into attributes. So we're going to change the way we're thinking a little bit and move from talking about financials to attributes. Attributes, you're going to see them all over in our system. Attributes are really just pieces of information that you'll use to describe your members. So my name is Adrian, my name being an attribute of who I am. We have separated our attributes out into 3 different sections. The first section you'll see here on my screen, these are built-in attributes. So you'll notice this is going to hold things like name, email address, physical address, phone number, and organization. Now these are built into the product because just about everybody out of our 1,800 plus associations we work with collect this information on their members. So you can't get rid of these from our product, but you can change these and specialize these to fit your database. So what I mean by that is if we look at email address, physical address, and phone number, each of these can be changed or molded to fit you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and select Edit Settings. In this area, you'll notice we've got a couple of different labels. So you guys will only have this first label in your product by default. You can add additional up to 5 total labels to help hold either 5 different email addresses, 5 different physical addresses, or potentially 5 different phone numbers for one member at any given time. So if you want to collect a home address, like a home email address, maybe a work email address, a secondary or a spouse's email address, whatever labels you have the ability to set those up right in here. And once you've reached that limit, you'll not be able to add any more labels because the system will tell you that your 5 label limit will be reached. To add a new label, you'll just type in what that label name will be like in this text box. Next to add an email label, you'll select add, and that's going to add it to the list that you see below here. So you will have the ability to do that for physical addresses, email addresses, and phone numbers. So those are our built-in attributes. We also have system attributes in the system. System attributes are going to keep track of your member's membership period and how much they owe in dues. Now we can't view those in this area, but we can view those in your members' profiles. So we'll look at that a little bit later. The third type of attribute that we keep in your system are custom attributes. So that's just right down here at the bottom. Custom attributes are going to be any type of information that you've collected on your members that we wouldn't know we needed to collect on your members. So we've created these special fields to hold that information. Now, I definitely want us to talk in person about what type of custom attributes you might want to add into your system. Also, when we would have imported your database, we would have gone ahead and just automatically created those custom attributes to hold the columns of information from your database that we didn't have a space for. So we would have already added by default the items that you would have needed to collect from your or capture from your database. So we'll talk a little bit more about these on our call together. One other item that we're going to talk about from the database training, or I should say the last kind of homework item that we would assign from this, is profile owner attribute security, and then there's just regular attribute security. Let's go ahead and look at those briefly. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into profile owner attribute security. Each of your members will have the ability to view their own profile. Now they can either edit the information in their profile, they can view only the information in their profile, or it might be hidden altogether. So I've got a legend over here on the left-hand corner, and you'll see your member types along the top as the column header for each of the columns that you see. Your job in this area is just going to be to go through each of your member types and determine what can they see in their profile, what can they edit in their profile, and what's totally hidden from them in their profile. Now you can toggle everybody at once. So if you want everybody to edit everything, you could go ahead and mass toggle everything under that specific column. I did want to go ahead and point out though, at the bottom of this area is going to be a list of all the system attributes. Those are right down here. You would not want them to be able to edit these, so you can select these individual boxes to change each individual box's option or status. Some of these items you may even want to hide from your members, and there's that member number we would have talked about earlier. So if you don't want your members to know they have a member number, if it's not important to them, we can hide that here. You would just need to do this for each of your member types. One tip I want to go ahead and provide, this also affects the data merge material. So if you're writing an email to your members and you want to data merge in their name to say dear blank, dear first name, if you don't have permission for them to be able to view their first name, they will not see that information populate on the email. Now, first name you'll probably want anybody to be able to view, but at times this expiration date, I think for some reason gets missed. And so that is one thing that you guys will probably be data merging a lot into notifications, whether it's for dues renewals or just in, emails you're sending out. Just an example of how this also applies in the product. In addition to profile owner attribute security, we also have just attribute security. Now, not only can your members view their profiles, but they also have the ability to view other individuals' profiles. This area is going to allow you to determine what each member type can see in other member types' profiles. So now this looks very similar, but we've added a drop down. Once again, you'll see your member types listed in this drop down, your member types listed along the top of these column headers, and you'll just want to make sure you've selected each member type and determine, okay, if I'm an admin profile, what can I see or do to prospect profiles? What can I see or do to, in this case, first year professional profiles to other admin profiles? Now you will probably be fine with admin being able to edit anything, but once we change our member type, in this case this would be associate, what can associates see in prospect profiles? Probably nothing, because these prospects shouldn't receive like networking abilities in the system because they're not actual members. So you'd probably want to leave these off. First year professionals, maybe the associates can see their address. Maybe they can see, maybe it's their office address that they would be able to see. They'd be able to see the contact name, maybe their primary email. But if you work your way all the way down to the bottom again, once again, you probably don't want them to see these system attributes. Maybe the expiration date, maybe the member type, but that's usually it. So you'll just want to go ahead and go through each member type to complete that. Keep in mind, if you have If you have a handful of member types, you may see a green arrow in the top right-hand corner. Go ahead and make sure you select that green arrow so that you can complete that for all member types, not just the ones that you see on this initial page. Now there are a few other things that I want to go over in the database training, but I'm going to go ahead and stop here. So I do want to go ahead and recap the homework items from the database training we would have covered today. That would have been the invoice templates, the invoice settings, the profile owner attribute security, and the attribute security. Please let me know if you guys have any questions from what we've discussed today. And if you do, we will definitely get together and talk about those. Thank you so much for your time and listening to our database part 1 training. And I look forward to speaking with you soon. Thanks so much.